Saturday, December 21st. Welcome to yet another bonus episode of Market Foolery. Little thing we like to call Apropos of Nothing because it has nothing to do with investing or business or stocks. So by all means, please skip this episode. Move on to whatever else is in your podcast queue. A few weeks ago, Bill Barker and I hung out in the studio with our longtime friend and colleague, Jim Gillies. It was just the three of us, as well as a very nice bottle of bourbon that was a gift from one of our listeners. If this is your first time listening to an Apropos of Nothing, I hope you enjoy eavesdropping on our conversation. And again, please don't listen to this thinking that at some point we're going to start talking about stocks. We don't at any point. But we do, however, talk about comedy, science fiction, movies, and since Jim Gillies is from Canada, we start with a classic Canadian film.
Do you remember the movie Strange Brew?
Yes.
Okay, so Strange Brew, Bob and
What
Doug
an
McKenzie.
offensive question. Do you remember that?
I was maybe 9 or 10 years old. I'm going to hockey practice because I'm a cliche. At the Rattle Trap Arena in Pickering, Ontario, where I was living, and there was 2 ice pads, and we were playing on one ice pad, and we look over at the other ice pad.
What is an ice pad?
I'm sorry, an ice
rink,
pad.
a rink.
Okay.
And a hockey rink.
Interesting.
Okay. So we're on the one, and over on the other, they've got weird things up for boards. They look almost like, are those beer cartons? And they've got 2 sets of players out there, except one looks like a team of stormtroopers from Star Wars, and one looks like a team of Darth Vaders from Star Wars. And as a 9 or 10-year-old kid, we're like, well, that's kind of cool, and we're not sure. They were filming the hockey scene for Strange Brew right there.
Wow.
And I had no idea about that until I actually saw the movie Strange Brew a couple of years later. I'm like,
You have been closer to an interesting event and were by
And
the age of 9
completely
than I
oblivious.
ever have been in my life.
yeah. And we have no idea what's going on at the time. We're just like, that looks weird. Okay, let's go play over here.
Yeah. Well, and Bob and Doug McKenzie, realistically, the best-known Canadians in America. I mean, if you were asked name
It's either
some
them or
Canadians.
Celine Dion, right?
Name some Canadian. Isn't she French or something?
For a stretch of time, yeah. I think that's true, Bob and Doug. Nobody asked you to sing. Let's talk about Guelph for a second, because Guelph is a place that sounds like it's in Middle Earth. And I'm just curious if it's only me and Barker and, probably most Americans who think that, or in Canada, does the name Guelph get a laugh or a smile at least?
I've always thought the name Guelph sounds like a body function. Excuse me, I'm going to go Guelph now. And it's just, it's we're 45 minutes outside of Toronto. Half the city gets up every morning and drives to Toronto. Why, I don't know, but it's become a bit of a feeder community. It's kind of, you can be in the big city and hang out in the big city without having to pay big city prices and put up with the big city most of the time. So it's not a bad place to live. But yeah, it sounds ridiculous. And it's kind of it's a very, I'll call it a greeny-weeny kind of town. It's very green, environmentally focused. Provincially, we elected the only green MP. And that's a good thing, I think, most days. But I've only lived there for 25 years, or 23 years. I'm not too sure I really have a well-formed opinion yet.
Demographically, Guelph, more orcs, elves, or dwarves?
Oh, definitely dwarves.
Dwarves? Because it is part of Middle Earth, isn't it?
Probably.
Pretty much.
One assumes.
What is Guelph known for anything in particular, whether it's an event or, here's a part of Guelph you should go to if you come to visit?
One of the best parts of Guelph, and this is 100% serious as opposed to most of the stuff, which will only be about 50% serious. There is a music festival every year called Hillside Festival. And it is one of the larger music festivals in Ontario, in Canada. It has successfully outlived a bunch of that have come and gone that have tried to be larger and, of course, blown their brains out financially. And they've done it by very slow. They've always got a fairly eclectic lineup, a lot of independent artists. They'll have 1 or 2 names that you've probably heard of. But if you follow the independent music scene, you'll have more choice. But and it's extremely environmentally friendly, green. There's no corporate advertising. There is no water bottles allowed, for example. Like there's no bottled water sold for $5. They bring in tanker trucks of City of Guelph water, and you fill up your reusable bottle. They have a green roof on the stage. There's multiple stages. There's and there's all kinds of how do I put this delicately? Feel good stories. Here's the yoga thing over here, and here's the learning to chant workshop over here, and so it gets a very. It wouldn't be. Let's put it this way: when Canada legalized marijuana, let's say Guelph was already a few years ahead of them.
All right.
Okay.
Wait.
Gassed up, full tank gas, gassed up car. You've got to get from Guelph to America as quickly as possible.
Hour and a half to Buffalo.
Hour and a half to
no problem. I don't even need to gas up the car fully.
How long does it take you from your hometown to get to America?
Wait, my hometown in Maine?
That's not America, right?
How long it takes to get to Canada?
No, to the rest of America.
Oh, the rest of America? I mean, 2 hours gets you to the New Hampshire border, so really figure another 30 minutes on top of that to get to Massachusetts.
So you consider that the start of America?
It's a gratuitous shot at New Hampshire.
Okay, because you actually come from a farther northern point than Jim.
Yeah, I was a little surprised to learn that recently. We're just sort of looking at a map and like, wait, where is Guelph? It's so much further south. So, but what's the snowfall like? You get the lake nearby.
We're on the right side of the lake though.
How many feet of snow right now?
Right now, well, when I left,
early
0.
November, so.
But I was informed this morning. I'm by the way, this might be a posthumous program for me.
People worried about that?
Well, no,
snow this deep into November?
I'm fairly certain I'm being murdered when I get home. Because the first thing I did is I left my significant other the night before. I left at 4 a.m. There was a sleepover for my daughter, and 7 of her closest friends were screaming and yelling all night, and then I bugged out at 4 a.m. So I was popular for that already, but then I was informed this morning that, oh yes, apparently 8 to 12 inches of snow is going to fall today. Thank you for leaving your car in the garage and leaving me outside. So I'm pretty sure I'm dying when I get home. But
well done. So, do you want to go into Mount Rushmore yet? Are you ready?
Sure.
Canadian
yeah.
Mount Rushmore?
Oh, we have to do Canadian? See,
no, you don't have to because you haven't played this game before. I've
got some for my Mount Rushmore, but they're not Canadian.
No, they don't need to be.
Okay,
Ours
good.
need to be Canadian, and then you can pick on us for our limited knowledge of Canada, or Canada, as it might be called, for all we know.
Sure.
Canadiana, I think, is how.
Is that the okay?
I think in the
apologies.
in the western part of the country, that's how it's pronounced. We were talking about this earlier today. The
We'll just come up with it together because I think there's going to be a lot of overlap, and it's at the points where we disagree, which will actually be interesting.
So Lorne Michaels is absolutely on the Mount Rushmore of comedy.
Yes,
in Canada,
he's arguably somebody I thought about for the Mount Rushmore of all comedy, including Americans.
The only non-American to be awarded the Mark Twain Prize for American humor. So there you go.
Basically an American.
You're welcome, America.
He's from Ontario, surely. He seems American in a British way.
He's from the part of the map that's basically American.
Yeah.
Who else are you putting on there?
Well, it's got to be John Candy.
Oh.
And really...
Solid.
Oh, okay.
Well, okay. You've got three better?
No,
You've got three better than John Candy?
Make your case.
The problem is it's hard for me to separate all of the SCTV talent and give it to any one individual rather than... I might go 3 out of 4 after Lorne Michaels. Maybe Dan Aykroyd's on there as well. But if I have to go with individuals from SCTV, John Candy is the one I'm going to go with.
So we agree Lorne Michaels number one, no questions asked. And I'm questioning, John Candy is absolutely your second pick for Mount Rushmore.
Yes.
Okay. He is right on the edge for me.
Okay.
I would actually put...
Who you got at number 2?
I would put Dan Aykroyd number 2.
All right. I mean, I can't hit you too hard for that.
And I would put Martin Short number 3.
And I've enjoyed... See, I think Martin Short's on my list. Again, it's hard for me to separate the work, because I think all of their best work was on SCTV for me, for my particular enjoyment of their comedy lives.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Guelph who is simmering.
There's just that one person who you understand that they're important, and you see the comment.
But you don't find them funny at all?
Nothing.
Okay.
I'm hard pressed to talk about Martin Short's work in movies, getting as putting him on Rushmore. It's really his sketch work.
Yeah,
that
I agree with that.
And even his work with Steve Martin, which I've watched on Netflix.
Three Amigos.
Not the Three Amigos. The global tour. I think they're in Australia right now, doing this tour together, and it was not as funny as I had hoped it would be. The time that I watched it. It's on Netflix. It's very different from seeing it live, as you, a professional stand-up comedian, can attest.
So here's where. So I've got those three, and for the fourth spot, John Candy, I'm considering Catherine O'Hara.
I can see Catherine O'Hara, sure. And this is where, ranking SCTV people against each other is, I have cognitive dissonance doing so, because it was their work together that was so great.
Yes, and Catherine O'Hara has the benefit of doing amazing work in movies. She's so funny in things like A Mighty Wind and, sort of those Eugene Levy, Christopher Guest movies. But
again, it's her work with Eugene Levy that stands out.
And John Candy is no longer with us. And,
wow.
And Catherine O'Hara's career.
You're taking points away for dying.
I'm not taking points away.
Dead people are dead to you.
This is harsh.
Yeah. But if you're thinking about movie work, I think he's got higher highs than Catherine O'Hara, who has been a great ensemble character actress and has done nothing. I love her work, but I don't know. Have you ever seen her? Was Andrea Martin, is she Canadian?
Yeah.
I saw her on stage once. Awfully good. I haven't seen Catherine O'Hara.
You're not putting her on Mount Rushmore, though, are you?
She hasn't followed up SCTV on film as
she was
strongly.
in My Big Fat Greek Wedding and My Big Fat Greek Wedding too.
Well, see, I'm plus betting, points and then negative points.
I'm betting everybody
That's a wash.
Who was in My Big Fat Greek Wedding signed up very quickly for the sequel.
Dave Thomas, Rick Moranis, it all blends together.
So
they were all so good.
I was looking over this list.
Speaking of Strange Brew
on
the McKenzie Brothers
on Ranker.com, and one of the
you cheated.
No. I was reminded of the fact that, and maybe I'm the only one for whom this phenomenon exists, but my memory is that when Mike Myers was on Saturday Night Live and was incredibly popular for his sketch work there, and then he goes on to do the Austin Powers movies and that sort of thing. My memory is that the fact that he was from Canada got name-checked all the time in a way that really didn't with John Candy or even, Martin Short or, it was just like, he's Canadian. It's like, yeah, why do you keep saying that like he's from Mars?
He's from Scarborough.
He's from Canada.
I have an investing tie-in for Mike Myers.
So Mike Myers, I think, as a writer for the show, is probably the one doing that rather than other writers, would be my guess. And
he was proud of his Scarberia roots.
And of course,
no, I'm just saying in the media. In the media, it got mentioned all the time. I'm like, yeah, we know.
Well, the SCTV personnel and the origin, of course, of Doug and Bob McKenzie,
I don't know.
So SCTV had a show, for those that don't know at all, in the 70s and then the 80s, and it was in various formats in various places, but it originated from Canada, and it was Canada has got a minute and a half, something like that, fewer commercials in a half hour than American TV at the time. And so
I feel that's no longer the case.
And so when they recorded, there was either some extra time or there is a requirement or was a requirement in Canada that you had to place a certain amount of Canadian content.
That is still in force.
Within each half hour or each hour or something.
With a 24-hour period.
And so they needed to put an extra minute in their show and make it Canadian or a minute and a half, whatever it was. And so they felt, well, this is stupid, and we're going to go over the top. Like, what does that even mean for a sketch comedy show? And so they did, improv. It's all improv. And they would just sit there and drink the beer and record a bunch of, takes until they got something that they would use. But it was all, derived from this requirement of putting a minute and a half of Canadian material into the show.
And with that, the launch to the Strange Brew movie, and then the
influence on Gillies,
and the influence on Gillies, and the 12 Days of Christmas that they did with Geddy Lee from Rush. Oh
yeah, well, if we were doing a Mount Rushmore of Canadian bands, Rush would be like at least three of them.
They're in the top 10.
Yeah. What is your investing connection to Mike Myers?
So Mike Myers,
it's Mike Myers, the comedian, not Michael Myers, the serial killer from the Halloween movies.
Can't they be both?
It would explain a lot.
No, Mike Myers, but now look, in fairness, after he destroyed his career with the Love Guru, the man did need, some gigs. But his older brother was like the head of marketing or the head of product or something like that for Sears. And so you may remember Sears as the now officially bankrupt but long-suffering, long-failing darling of value investors. It's going to come back. It's going to come back. This time for real.
It's a real estate play.
It's a real estate play. Well, it's a zero now. But and so he was fairly high up in Sears Canada. And Sears owned like 95% of Sears Canada or whatever. I think they bought the whole thing in before they finally imploded. But so one holiday season, I'm guessing 3, 4, 5 years ago, Mike Myers starts doing a commercial for his brother for Sears Canada, like, come to Sears for all your holiday needs. And it was just kind of sad, like he was clearly doing it for his brother to help out with his brother. But it was kind of sad to see Austin Powers, to see, this guy from SNL hawking crap from Sears.
Yeah.
And then the coda to that was when Sears Canada went down and they basically fired everybody and laid off everybody on the way up to it finally slipping beneath the waves. This thing came out that one of the firings in this latest round was Mike Myers' brother.
So it wasn't, the commercials were not done in sort of a tongue-in-cheek, ironic way, in the way that
it was look at me, I'm Mike Myers, and this is my brother, okay. And
it wasn't when Will Ferrell with the Funny or Die people. No. Did the Pabst Blue Ribbon ads.
No, I think it was actually legitimately serious trying to drum up interest in coming to Sears. And I don't know if this, I'm sure this is, you had it down here as well, but you would get the Sears Wish Book every year in November. And of course, everybody of our generation would start going through, and I want this, and I want this as a kid. I think it was an attempt to jumpstart that for a digital age. And you just, can't do it.
Can we talk about that for a second? The Funny or Die stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to pivot slightly to College Humor because you had made a reference which I didn't pick up a couple of days ago when we were, and this will be a surprise to longtime listeners, when we were getting coffee, but to Rocky for having ended the Cold War in Rocky IV.
Yeah.
And I had never seen that and didn't know. I didn't know.
You had never seen Rocky IV?
I'd seen Rocky IV, but not the College Humor 30 for 30 spoof. Were you referring to that?
No, I was just referring to Rocky IV.
Okay, so 30 for 30, there's some College Humor did a couple of spoofs on 30 for 30, and one of them was on Rocky ending the Cold War in sort of the deadpan 30 for 30 style.
Yeah.
And it's about a 4 or 5 minute clip.
That's great.
I was, listening to the 30 for 30 podcast where they had a show on the fakes of 30 for 30. And so one of them was a 30 for 30 spoof take on Space Jam, just taking Space Jam seriously and reviewing how remarkable it was that Michael Jordan was able to lead a team with Bugs Bunny, et cetera, to beat these, alien monsters. So I thought that's what you were referring to. But there is a pretty good take on how remarkable it was for the Politburo to stand up and start rooting for Rocky because what his Rocky spirit?
The underdog, America. I don't know. It's one of those things where at the time you're, in high school, it's like, yeah. And then pretty quickly thereafter, I was like, wait a minute. What happened? Why was okay, all right. I mean, the fight was good.
And what I was thinking was, if Market Foolery wanted to start doing sort of spoofs on itself, to seriously do a show, seriously taking the day's events as covering major fictional works as if they were news of the day, like Wall Street. Today, Gordon Gekko went to jail. Do we have any thoughts on that sort of thing?
So we actually did a version of that. I'm pretty sure it was this year. It was either this year or last year, the April 1st.
Oh, I don't listen.
Yeah. Neither do I. The April 1st episode, I think it was this year, and basically took fictional companies.
Are you still on your first class? Just
yeah,
you'll edit this part out, right? The peer pressure.
It's always possible. So April 1st did an episode that was talking about fictional companies from past Motley Fool jokes that we've done in the past. So 20 years ago, during the .bomb explosion, we did the joke was about a fictional .com company called eMeringue, where it was a guy running an auto parts company, and then he starts a meringue business.
Today it would be a cannabis company.
Yeah.
Still, I would say top Motley Fool, April Fool.
I would say definitely a top three joke.
My favorite.
Definitely a top three joke. So eMeringue. So we talked about eMeringue.
For ambition and execution, I think eMeringue ranks number one.
Roman Financial Services, based off of the original joke that Tom and David Gardner did in the early 1990s, basically trying to, as a way to teach people online in the earliest days of online stock forums, that penny stocks are a really bad idea. So they create this fake account. They create a fictional character named Joey Roman, and he has a newsletter called Routine for Roman, and he's just promoting these fake companies and just saying, I recommended this company at 20 cents a share, and I got out at 50, and doubling your money is Routine for Roman, and all this sort of thing. So we did this episode. And did what you're talking about. Just treated it like, oh yeah, this is real news, and got some angry email. Got a couple of angry email from people,
which is always what you're looking for from an April Fool's joke.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
right?
You get the email from people who are like, that was great, I loved it. You get the email from people who are saying, I've never heard of these companies, and then I remembered what day it was. But there were 2 or 3 email from people that were so angry. And how dare you? And you're yeah, it was literally like, you think you're so smart fooling people. And it's like, the name of our company is the Motley Fool. We're talking. There's no way for you to be financially. I get that your feelings are hurt. There's no way for you to be financially hurt by these companies because they don't exist. And you can't trade. Roman Financial Services is not a public company that you can trade.
So and so it works as an April Fool's joke in large part because people don't know the old jokes. Mm-hmm. And what I'm picturing is sort of a cousin of that, but sort of like, oh, as you like to refer to, the news ferry arrived, and like the Duke brothers went bankrupt today, and the lead stories are classic pieces of cinema or TV that all right-thinking Americans should be familiar with, and even perhaps
occasionally a Canadian too.
Yeah. Cover the Duke brothers being ruined as a news story.
I'm pretty sure April 1st.
Not necessarily as an April Fool's joke.
Falls on a weekday, so I don't know. That might be something we slip in.
Okay.
Can we talk about Gillies' nerdery for a second? His level of nerdery.
His level of nerdery?
Yeah, just sort of where it lies, where the nerdery lies.
Well, I think I'm
strangely intrigued now. What are we talking about?
You want to put some bumpers on that. You don't want to invite some nerd to go too nerdy on his stuff and then just not rein it in at all, because that could be
What can go wrong?
That could be a chunk of time.
It could be. No, I'm just curious about the origin.
Liquefaction.
That was great.
We'll come back to liquefaction. No, but based on conversations we've had in person and also just someone who sees what you post on Facebook, cycling, I think of you as a cycling nerd and absolutely a Star Wars nerd. So
Maybe
Wait, can you be a cycling nerd?
I think you can be.
If you can be one, Jim is one. You're saying, because I don't. I think of that as like.
I'm a failed cycling nerd because your classic
Is
like
that just
road
like-
cyclist is 5'7", 145 pounds. I know you're not filming
Tom
this.
Cruise.
I am not 5'7", and I have not been 145 pounds since I was 14 years
you're
old.
like 6'2", 185.
Thank you. Let me assure the three listeners still around. No,
Nobody's
I'm not.
listening at this point.
I'm not.
There's nobody listening.
Yeah, so I
Pressure's
do
off.
have 5 bicycles, if that's any indication.
5?
Yes. Well, you have different uses.
Well, that's more like a fan or an addict than a nerd. Like now, if he's going to go off on like what
I did actually hold myself off. It was a really great price, but I didn't buy a 6 bicycle that where the water bottle holder traditionally is, there was a built-in flask.
That's probably a good idea.
And my significant other was telling me, no, you should buy it. You deserve this bike. You should buy it. I'm like, I don't know where we're going to put it.
Yeah, she's not saying that today. Not after you.
No.
She's not after you left her with a house.
She's going to murder me when I get home.
house full of snow.
As someone who owns 0 bicycles, what are the 5 bicycles used for?
Oh, I have 2 road bikes. So long distance racing-ish or like long distance group rides or whatever. So we're talking 60 to 100 kilometers, for example. Or you go out after work, you
Wait
go
a
for
minute.
30 kilometers. Sorry.
I got to do math. Hold on.
60 miles is 100 kilometers, roughly.
Okay.
I have just a general runabout hybrid bike just for going downtown for coffee on a Saturday morning, go to the farmer's market. I have a tandem bike because I have ridden from one end of Ontario to the other end of Ontario with one child on the back. And when they were smaller, I used to have a trailer that would also fit behind the tandem bike so the 3 of us could go wherever.
And what is that distance, one end of Ontario to the other?
Well, it's from Ottawa down to Windsor. So from where I am in Guelph, Windsor's about 280 kilometers and Ottawa's 500 and change, 600. So it's 800 and somewhere between 800 and 900 kilometers on a tandem. So you're pulling. Oh, the kid did all the work. Let's be honest. And then one time we went to Sandusky, Ohio from Guelph. So that took my daughter and I 4 days to do.
So I mean, that's a long distance thing.
Yeah. You're packing your stuff, so the bike is fully bike packed. You've got your tent on it, and you've got your sleeping bags.
Chris is a long distance runner, as you know,
and a stand-up comedian.
marathoner, hospitalized more often than not when he marathons. How many hospital visits for that
0
going across? Really?
0.
Interesting.
I've been incredibly fortunate.
When you went to Sandusky,
It just
Ohio,
sounds like you weren't trying hard enough.
Well, yeah, really.
Really, if you cared,
there
you
was
would have been
one time. So I
hospitalized.
did.
That's the mark of a competitor.
I did tell there was one time where I was okay. So this is my brilliant idea. It was flash forward, not a brilliant idea. I decided that we were going to go to Montreal for the weekend, but she was going to drive and I would ride my bike. And so I left Sunday because we're going for the following weekend. So it's going to take me 5 days to get there. So, 6 days. 6 days of riding to get there. And so I get about 100 kilometers from my house, and I'm right downtown Toronto because there's a waterfront trail that runs along Lake Ontario. So I'd cut down to there from Guelph, and I was going all the way along. And I'm pretty much right in front of the Sky Dome, or Rogers Centre now, where the Blue Jays play. And my front tire hit a seam, an asphalt and concrete seam, which had the impact of stopping the front tire dead. And I did not stop dead. The back tire kept going, and I kept going. So I landed, and unbeknownst to me, cracked 2 ribs.
How is that unbeknownst to you?
Well, I didn't think it was that bad. I thought I could shake it off. And so I got back on the bike.
Was it the flask?
It was not. No, this was one of the road bikes, and I'd gone for a week, and I was staying at my buddy's place, which is 160 kilometers from my house the first night. And he has a trailer. I was going to stay at his trailer the next night, which is another 120 kilometers past that. And then I had a couple of flea bag motels I was going to stay in along the way, and the whole thing was planned. I was traveling with very minimal stuff. I had just a couple things in my backpack and very minimal. And my partner was going to bring my stuff to Montreal for the weekend. So I get back on the bike and I ride that last 60 kilometers, which is the longest 60 kilometers of my life, from where I cracked out to my friend's place just east of Toronto. And I'm still like, I'm hurting. I was like, too stupid to go to the hospital, of course. And I still thought I was going to keep going. And then that night I was crashed at my friend's place and, lie down in the bed, and I suddenly realized I can't breathe because my chest won't expand anymore because these ribs are no longer structural components. They're just kind of floating there. So that was at that point I said, yeah, I'm gonna call this one off. So I had to get on the train, take it back to Guelph, and went to the hospital. But that was just me solo. There was no tandem.
Right,
so that's the worst one I ever did.
That would be dumb if you or me did that, but you're an engineer.
Oh, yeah.
By training, so I expect you to know better.
Yeah, this was stupid.
About how the body is
really stupid.
Constructed.
Yes.
I got a couple of questions.
Oh, and I have a snow bike,
This
too.
is sort of rapid fire questions.
Real quick, snow bike.
Bike.
Regular bike with snow tires?
It's big. The
Chains?
tires, fat tires.
Okay.
5-inch tires.
Okay.
How many snowmobiles do you have?
0.
I believe they're called snow machines.
Also 0.
Only in Alaska.
Okay, go on.
In Maine, you don't call them snow machines, do you?
Yeah.
Snowmobiles.
Yeah.
You speak English in Maine.
Well, there's a fair amount of French spoken in Maine, too.
Is there?
Yeah.
Is there a big French population there?
Oh, yeah.
Like the Quebecois? Same-ish?
Ish. Yeah.
Okay. So it's
Go on.
So I was listening to a podcast this morning doing an overrated, underrated thing, which you do sometimes. Halloween candy and other topics.
Yeah.
Canada topics. Overrated, underrated. For Jim, I'm not looking for long answers. I'm looking for a quick take, which then will drive into some ditches of pointlessness. Overrated or underrated, the Maple Leafs?
Overrated. And that hurts as a fan, but overrated.
Any thoughts on that? No. I mean, we don't get it.
I'll take.
We don't get it because the equivalent in the U.S. is basically the Yankees, like a team.
No. The Yankees win sometimes,
right? But of like national import.
I've
and
seen them win the World Series in my lifetime.
Yeah.
I have not and will not see the Toronto Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup in my lifetime.
Well, you got to believe you'll see them.
No,
never.
No.
I mean, is the ownership or you just like, oh, it's bad luck, or is like, oh yes, there are structural issues why they will never.
Well,
win.
right now there's a structural issue,
which is what?
They're too soft. They're
Well,
going to go into the playoffs, and they're just going to have their heads handed to them by Boston again or Washington.
Is
and that's
that
it.
because ownership doesn't know how to run the business?
It's because the current general manager thinks that everyone should love each other, and you don't need to play hard in the playoff game. He's really big into skill and speed.
Very hockey to me.
Well, he's all big into skill and speed, and playoff hockey's
Is he
not
European.
No, he's from Ontario.
I don't get it. Loons.
Underrated.
Yeah. They're pretty sounding birds. What else? What
attack ducks? They can get you. They can get them 100 feet underwater. You are not safe. They're going to come get you.
Montreal.
Underrated. Montreal's great.
I agree.
I love Montreal.
I love Montreal.
I'm not saying that because I was born there.
Is there an issue like Toronto, Montreal, where you're supposed to badmouth them, like out of loyalty to Toronto?
40 years ago, maybe. I don't know.
No,
I love all my country equally.
No, but
except for Edmonton,
and
Winnipeg.
If you're downtown in Toronto, it's just all right. What's wrong with those places?
There are days when it is, and this is dead serious. There are days when it is legitimately warmer on Mars than it is in Winnipeg.
But is Winnipeg overrated or underrated?
Winnipeg is. How many Canadians are listening to this? Winnipeg's awful.
Nobody.
It's either frozen or it's mosquito season.
Got any more?
No, you're the one with the list. Go for it.
It was a short list. I mean, that's all the things that I can think of.
Oh, the only other one I was going to throw out there was Canadian bacon, of course.
Canadian bacon, sure.
It's just brined pork loin.
Okay.
But it includes.
Can't you like bacon and?
It includes in its title bacon, which so
bit of a misnomer.
So your expectations are very high, and then you have it, and but that wasn't bacon.
Not bacon.
Not bacon. Overrated, I say.
Why is
misnamed? I'll say.
Well, then rename it. Canadian pork loin.
Much of what I know about Tim Hortons, I know from talking to you, and you're not a fan. And the expansion of Tim Hortons would make sense to me if you were like, no, you just don't get it. This is
Well, it's better than Dunkin' Donuts.
okay.
And we're done. Gillies is out of here. No.
And go.
So Tim Hortons. So I'm less negative on Tim Hortons. I've been as a stock, I actually quite like the stock.
We're not talking about stocks. This is apropos of Canada,
right? So as an experience, it's suboptimal most of the time. My son, when he was about 5 years old, I think, I made some mention. He noticed that I never went to Tim Hortons back then. And
were you planning on raising him as a Canadian?
Well, we exposed him to
Is
other.
he raised as a Canadian?
Well, we do try. We do try. But he noticed and he says, "Oh, Daddy, why don't you drink Tim Hortons?" And I said, "Well, that's because it tastes like ash." And he kind of looked at me, like, because he didn't think I said ash. He thought I said a similar three-letter word. And I said, it's just very. I equate a lot of the taste of Tim Hortons. I had a lot of friends in high school, shall we say, who started smoking cigarettes a little early, and used to be able to smoke in coffee shops and restaurants in Canada. And so you go hang out with your buddies in high school, and half of them are smoking, and the place just smells like ash, and that was Tim Hortons for me. They've kind of grown up a lot. I'm not a sweet drink guy. I'm not like kind of a whipped cream and frou-frou and whatever. So from a pure coffee perspective, I much prefer Starbucks. There's a small company, and this is a missed opportunity, but it's the Canadian. 20 years ago, this was the Canadian Starbucks. It's a company called Second Cup Coffee, and they had the premium coffee market in Canada. And they really should have been able to take that market. They were going to get it ahead of Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons is more the hockey arenas and the long haul truckers. And Second Cup, they were partially owned by a company called Cara Foods, who owns a bunch of restaurants up there. And they were kind of they had family squabbles. They were fighting over it. And so as they were fighting over it and everything was going on, this little company called Starbucks kind of waltzed in and basically took their lunch while they was infighting. So they all woke up 5 years later, and there's 5 times as many Starbucks at the time than Second Cup, and Second Cup's done. What Second Cup should have done is they should have sold to Starbucks when they came in, or at least they should have partnered with them. But
are they gone? Are they just completely gone now?
They might as well be gone, but because they're not. But there's like one in every city that has more than 50,000 people, and it's probably located near a university or college. And that's just kind of it. There's no growth. They were. This is how bad things were getting. They were going to partner with marijuana companies to try to like drum up interest. So, and that's kind of in the last year. That's been kind of the kiss of death, right? It's like, oh, we're now. It's kind of like it's almost like blockchain. We're not an iced tea company. We're a blockchain company. Well, we're not a coffee company anymore. We're a marijuana company. Please love our stock. And so
there we go. So we talked about the bicycle nerdery, the Star Wars nerdery.
I don't know what you mean.
How are you feeling about the end of this next trilogy? Are you excited?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Oh yeah.
High hopes.
This in Star Wars nerd circles, this will be controversial to some. I happen to think The Last Jedi, which was the last movie, gets better every time you watch it. And I think in time it's going to be like right now. If you ask any Star Wars fan or casual fan, what's the best Star Wars movie? 95% of people are going to say Empire Strikes Back, right? Everyone loves the first one. Empire's a better movie. Return of the Jedi is kind of a fall off. There's been a lot of hate on the prequels, some unnecessarily. And I've had this argument in my house, actually, because I think...
If you could edit out the Ewoks, Jar Jar Binks, and...
But they largely did edit out. Jar Jar Binks is really only in the first movie.
The Anakin Padme love story. I think
the third movie, Revenge of the Sith, is better than Return of the Jedi.
Wouldn't you get rid of 90% of the issues?
Yeah, well, you'd get rid of the Phantom Menace. Okay, no one needs to see Darth Vader as a whiny 9-year-old. Okay.
Oh yes.
Right. So okay.
Nobody needs to see
Phantom
him
Menace
or,
is gone.
or Jar Jar Binks.
Or Jar Jar
Although
Binks.
Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson, they do perfectly serviceable work.
Sure.
I mean, it's not important. You could get
Liam
rid
dies,
of it.
but it's. But Ewan McGregor is
he's
Obi-Wan
not an
Kenobi.
embarrassment.
No.
Like
the rest of them.
Hayden Christensen.
I mean, when you're talking about Anakin Skywalker actors, you've got James Earl Jones.
No, he's the voice.
Well,
David Prowse is the actor.
We can get into this, but he is Darth Vader, and then you fall way off after that. If they had casted that a little bit better, if they had casted the history of Anakin Skywalker better.
Yeah, no one needed to see Darth Vader as a whiny 9-year-old.
No.
So that's a hill I'll die on. But the next movie,
that's not even a hill to die on. That's fortified. You're nobody's going to take you out of that one.
Yeah, we got you.
You got a turret. You've got all the ammunition.
The Clone Wars television series, which straddles between the first two prequel movies, is excellent. And it really does a good job of fleshing out the world that was in the prequels. So maybe that's why I think.
Where's your kid on all this?
Oh, which one? They're both. It's a nerd house. Yeah. I mean, the whole house is a nerd house.
And your son? I mean, I think of that being the question. It's if sexist, at least in my house, there's my son, Star Wars, total fan, and his sister's.
No,
okay,
we make
Star
a point
fine,
when every Star Wars movie comes out. We take the kids out of school and we go to opening day shows because we figure they're not going to remember whatever class they're in
Definitely,
school.
That's a good. I took the day off from school for return.
Yeah, but and when we went and saw Rogue One, which was the movie that it's the standalone story, but it's the run into the original Star Wars. Yeah. Basically, my partner, she turns to me after the movie, and I'll edit for.
Thank you.
But she goes, now that's how you do a prequel. That's the prequel we wanted, George.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're not wrong.
Well, that's one of the things not just because I'm a Disney shareholder, but one of the things I like about when Disney bought Lucasfilm, and it came out right after the deal was closed that Lucas had handed over all of his ideas for 7, 8, and 9 for 7, 8, and 9, and they were like, no thanks, we appreciate it, we're good.
Well, and the thing is, if you actually some of the details of those treatments have come out. And thank God they threw them away. Oh yeah, like they were just going to explore the world of the midichlorians. We're just going to hand
this off to J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, we'll let him roll with it. We're recording this before the launch of Disney Plus. Is it safe to assume that you're getting Disney Plus so you can watch The Mandalorian?
My house is molten. Okay, I'm molten, but my whole family.
What does that mean in America?
We are for The Mandalorian. Yeah, we're.
Okay, I assumed.
Yeah,
and is that coming out weekly, or is
comes out tomorrow?
Are they streaming the whole thing? But
no, it's 8 episodes. Episodic. Yeah. Mainly, I think Fridays, but they're gonna stagger it one day so it doesn't run into Rise of Skywalker's release.
No,
it's a. Maybe not a popular opinion, but for a lot of people, a lot of Star Wars purists, Disney ruined Star Wars. No, Disney saved Star Wars.
Oh yeah,
I mean, and
Star Wars was not riding on a high.
There wouldn't have been more movies.
Sith was okay, but
Sith is better than Jedi. This gets me punched at home when I say that. But.
I would say that Sith could have dropped about 20 minutes, and Jedi could have dropped the Ewoks, and then it would be a fair fight.
Jedi was supposed the original was supposed to be Wookiees, not Ewoks.
Yeah,
that would be a better movie.
Well, you could re-edit.
Yeah.
So. One of the things I said...
It sort of made the stormtroopers a little less threatening when they're taken out by slingshots.
By teddy bears.
Yeah. And it's like...
This armor does nothing.
When I went to Disney World once with the kids, and Darth Vader is walking around the theme park and signing autographs for kids. And he was, if kids gave him their little autograph books and a pen, he would sign, and then he would jerk the pen away from them to make them jump up and get it, which I thought was a nice evil touch.
Nice,
but it still seemed to understate the evil of the man.
So your point is kids are stupid.
Well, my point is that I felt like Darth Vader signing autographs kind of
ruined. How about Darth Vader?
It made
him
seem less threatening.
Well, there's now a dance contest down there. The Darth Vader's in there
again.
Yeah.
It's
I heard an interview with Jon Favreau, the director, and he was being asked about working with Harrison Ford, and Ford being pretty reticent to.
Jon Favreau worked with Harrison Ford.
Cowboys and Aliens.
Right.
So he Harrison Ford, not really someone who's all that outgoing and
He's prickly.
Prickly, little, not really a big storyteller until Jon Favreau figured out that you could get Harrison Ford to tell stories if you got him angry. If you told him something that you had heard that was false. And the example he gave was he was talking to him one time and he said, "So on Return of the Jedi, is it true that the Ewoks were your idea?" And Harrison Ford was like, "What? No!" And he just sort of exploded at me.
All right, I got something we never covered, which was your Mount Rushmore of
my Mount
comedian
Rushmore.
influences, and
I feel it's probably going to slip into favorites.
that's okay.
One Canadian thing that you guys, I thought, played
doesn't
down
have
here.
to be Canadian.
I realize that,
because we'd like to learn more about you.
Well, who
through
needs
your
that,
choices, then make an argument that somebody is a better comedian than somebody else.
The one thing you guys didn't mention at all, which I'm a little surprised at because I thought it had more play down here. No one mentioned Kids in the Hall. Did the Kids in the Hall never?
I didn't. I have heard good things about it, and the individuals. I've enjoyed their work elsewhere. David Foley.
Dave Foley.
Dave Foley, yeah.
Mark McKenna.
Yep.
But I didn't actually watch it. And what's his name from Breaking Bad? Wasn't he? Or that? No, sorry, that was a different show.
I was going to say no.
Oh, you're thinking of Bob Odenkirk?
Bob Odenkirk,
from Mr. Show.
Mr. Show, which is in the same category in my brain of great shows that I've heard people say great things about, but I never got to watch.
And I think at least part of it with Kids in the Hall was when that show hit, and it was sort of as cable was expanding, but before streaming took off. Mm-hmm. And so if it had hit 3 or 4 years earlier when there were fewer cable channels, I feel like it gets more exposure. If it hits 4 or 5 years, or at some period of time later when streaming is taking off, and then it becomes the holy cow, you got to watch this show.
The really strange Canadiana fun fact, which I suppose is my job today. Anne of Green Gables.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we all know Anne of Green Gables down here. PEI, plucky little orphan redhead.
Prince Edward Island.
For
yes. Those unfamiliar.
So I go. So I have a daughter, and she's 11, and she's probably 7 or 8 years old. Decide, okay, let's watch Anne of Green Gables. I'd read the kids Anne of Green Gables as their bed story, so okay, let's watch the beloved CBC miniseries. And there's 2 of them. There's Anne of Green Gables and Anne of Green Gables, the sequel. And it was then I realized that not 1, but 2 of the Kids in the Hall members have roles in Anne of Green Gables. Oh, wow. And I'm like, oh, that's Bruce McCullough. And Dave Foley would be one of them.
That's
so I'm
great.
like, oh, okay. Hey, everyone needs a paycheck, so that's good. So my Mount Rushmore, I have an unhealthy love for George Carlin. I think he's one of the great.
Don't think it's unhealthy.
I don't think that's unhealthy.
Yeah, so he is my. He's the first guy I put on there. You guys, of course, are all thinking, Macro and, Lorne Michaels. And I'm like, no, I'm just thinking.
No, we were just talking Canadian. We didn't mention Lorne Michaels in our own Mount Rushmores originally, although he was somebody I thought about later.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a clearly well thought out pick versus I like George Carlin. But that's, I mean, anything the man ever did, I just howled at.
Just
and
to go
it's
into,
smart commentary, too.
Go into who mine were. They were. The topic was influences rather than people you want to argue are better comedians than anybody, but people that are specific to your own. I think it's often, at least the way I think of it, should be your youth, which is where your choices for comedy are most going to be influenced.
George Carlin, was the first stand-up comedian to do something that is now being done by a lot of other comedians, and which is honing his act to getting to the point where he does an hour-long special, and then all of those jokes go away.
Yeah.
So he was really the first one to say, nope, I'm just getting rid of this act. I'm going to build a whole new hour, which is really hard to do.
Yeah.
So Carlin,
And,
who else?
Carlin
Steve Martin couldn't do it. Not that he didn't have the ability to do it, but he was trapped by the success of his.
You have to do Wild and Crazy Guy.
Yeah, you've got to like bring out your bits that your all-star bits, because that's what a stadium full of people came to see you do.
Well, and they just had the ceremony. I don't think it'll be on television until the first week of January, but the Mark Twain Prize was just given to Dave Chappelle. And Chappelle is one of those comedians who, when he's working on his act, he will go to clubs at 1 a.m, 2 a.m, that sort of thing, when, to the extent that there's an audience, they're exhausted. And that's when he's like, no, this is how I'm going to know whether this stuff works or not. So...
And,
who else you got?
I'm a fan of several British comedians, and so
it's Mount Rushmore. You get 4, all right?
Okay, well, I'm gonna go with the. So people would talk about the Kids in the Hall, and they would
Meryl Streep's comedy work is underrated. And,
it really was. She was a great Mamma Mia. No, she. Gosh. No, so Kids in the Halls. Oh, the Canada's Monty Python. I'm like, I think you are severely underselling the original Monty Python. So can I put Monty Python as a collective in there?
There was some argument about whether Monty Python as an entity could be on there,
fine.
but
or if I have to pick one, it'll probably be Cleese. But I would like to put all of them in there.
Put Python on there.
Yeah, so Python's one. The third I really like, and this is going to get me thrown out, I imagine. Rowan Atkinson,
get out.
I love Rowan Atkinson, and I'm not meaning for the Mr. Bean work, which is funny, which is fine. But he did a TV series before that called Blackadder.
Oh, right.
Blackadder is hands down for me the funniest thing I've ever watched. But he's so just sarcastic and bitter, and it's fantastic. And then from Blackadder or from Rowan Atkinson, you get into some of the other bit players who would go around there. So you got the Hugh Laurie's and the Stephen Frys and all these guys who were these great cerebral British comics that didn't really translate half the stuff they did, but the stuff that did translate over on this side of the pond was fantastic.
I know
everyone thinks of Hugh Laurie as he's Dr. House now, and he's Hugh Laurie is hysterical.
So he had a turn on Veep. He was great on Veep. But I still don't think of him as a comedy actor.
So do you consider Julia Louis-Dreyfus for that? Because she was Elaine.
Yeah.
Veep is hilarious. Even that TV show, New Adventures of the Old Christine?
Yeah.
A lot of people really like that.
So we were talking about influences, and she didn't really come along. Her body of work, at what I would take as the most likely time of your life where you're going to be influenced. Mm-hmm. And I had included Letterman, who was a little, obviously, later period than my early childhood, because I had Cosby in there, which...
that didn't age well.
I was going to say.
It's not that it didn't, at the time... I don't think you would ask a 9-year-old like, hey, do you know what he's going to be up to or going to be found out to be up to for, years later.
I've paid money to see Cosby live, so I'm kind of like,
and it was
20 years ago. But.
You probably enjoyed it. And, if you have to say, I feel bad about enjoying that moment 20 years ago when I couldn't have known anything, well, then, you're playing to, today's directives. But we had all of his albums and listened to them and loved them. And he was, held up rightly as a great influence on children through Fat Albert and the Electric Company and things like that. Not to like get into what might seem to be a defense of Cosby. It's just, when we were growing up, he was somebody you should be looking up to as a child in the 70s and 80s. And so it was that you haven't gotten to your fourth. You went into what I was going to say is Stephen Fry, one listener, I believe at one point wrote in once some videos went up and said, this, I thought just listening to the podcast, I had a picture in my head of who people looked like, and I was expected to look like Stephen Fry.
Really?
By one of the people who wrote in. I think that's what they thought of when
that's
they
all I'll
listened to
think
me.
of now.
Which And I think his work is brilliant. But if I am found to look like him, then I guess I'll have to live with that. But I don't think
we'll need to break your nose.
I don't think I do look like him.
Well, it's like years ago, it was a friend of one of the people who worked here at the Fool came and was visiting when we were recording Motley Full Money, and so he sat on the other side of the glass and
You were
watched the show.
supposed to look like somebody awfully good looking.
Yeah. So after the show, I was like, hey, so now you've seen the show, and it was clear from the look on his face that he was disappointed by what he had just watched. Like he had just listened, he loved listening to Motley Full Money, and now he got to watch it being recorded, and it was just like, wow, God. And so I said, yeah, it seems like it was a kind of a letdown, and he was trying to be nice. He's like, no, it was good. And I said, no, it's fine. It's fine. You're not going to hurt my feelings. It's fine. And he said, I said, you were picturing something different, weren't you? And he said, yeah, I really was. I said, what were you picturing? And he said, I was picturing a TV set. I was picturing like you guys on a set and lots of lights and TV monitors and all this. And I pictured all of you wearing suits and ties. And I was like, oh God, well, this really was.
We failed this.
And he said, I thought you would all look different. You all look different from what I pictured. And I thought you were going to look like the guy on the fashion show. I'm like, what fashion show? He's like, the fashion show on TV. And I thought for a minute.
The fashion show.
And I thought for a minute, and I said,
RuPaul?
I said, Project Runway? And he said, yeah, that's it. I said, you thought I looked like Tim Gunn? He said, yeah, that's what I pictured, Tim Gunn. Now, Tim Gunn is, 12 to 15 years older than me. But I thought to myself, he's a really good-looking guy. And I just thought, okay, I'll take that.
I have, shall we say, had elevated discussions with people over...
What does that mean, arguments?
Something like that, yes.
Okay.
Over Blade Runner, which, of course, is the most beloved science fiction movie of all time. And it's a movie that I legitimately like. But I made the argument one time in a group, much like this, actually, where...
In a studio with alcohol?
Yeah, in a studio with alcohol.
Like
well, there was alcohol.
Nerds around.
There was alcohol and nerds.
So it wasn't like this at all.
Well...
50%.
But that, Rick Deckard, Harrison Ford's character, to bring it back to Harrison Ford, Rick Deckard is just bad at his job.
Blade Runner 2, any good?
Fantastic.
I want to hear the rest of his argument.
He's just bad at his job. His job is you are supposed to retire these human-looking robots, these replicants.
Not fall in love with them.
Well, she's not the one he's supposed to retire. But basically, of the four, one gets killed by someone else. One gets the drop on him, and he inadvertently kind of kills her because she runs away when she should have finished the deal.
Spoiler alerts here.
Again, the movie is almost 40 years old. You should have seen it by now.
And by the way, the movie takes place today.
Today, yeah, November 2019. A third one gets a drop on him, and then the fourth one dies because it only has a 4-year lifespan, so it dies in front of him. And it's like, he does nothing.
So I wrote something about 15 years ago, back when, as you will recall, the home run articles were doing the rounds. And
we're old.
We are old. And, well, not because of that, but time otherwise. And the premise of it was that movies tended to portray the future. And this is actually going to be relevant to like a normal podcast. Portray the future 30 years ahead of time as radically different from what you were experiencing today. That was a comfortable enough period of time that you could do something like Blade Runner or 2001 when it came out, 30, 40, 30 some years like that.
Escape from New York.
And Escape from, anything like that. And that in reality, things change. Although things change, they change a lot less than you would gauge for movies. And I think I took the premise from, I went to the 100 best movie quotes of all time from the AFI and used the one that had like a distant future and what year the future was supposed to take place as sort of the data that I was relying upon for this. But the Terminator was in there. And like the Terminator, when was that supposed to have gone down? When was Skynet supposed to have taken over?
1997.
Yeah, you are a nerd. And
yep.
to know that. Just that wasn't even 20 years. Okay.
I was actually going to be watching the first Terminator with my son on Saturday night, but we opted for Shaun of the Dead instead.
But if
by the way,
if somebody were making a movie right now and they were like, oh, let's make it in like I don't know 2059, that seems like far enough away that we can create people hanging around on Mars. Things change much more slowly in the science fiction category than you think. And you can invest. I know we promise not to give any investment advice on Apropos of Nothing, but you can take a little bit more of a long-term horizon with something like a Cheerios or something that really does not change over time.
I believe 1997 is also the year that Escape from New York takes place.
Does it?
That was made in
81.
I think. I thought it was a couple of years earlier, but just the whole crime in America has risen 4,000% or whatever it is.
And we've put the entire island of Manhattan is now a prison camp.
And also when we were kids, there was 2 or 3 years of a regular show called Space 1999, where there was a base.
That show.
Martin Landau. There's a base.
Moonbase Alpha.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, this is only 22 years in the future or whatever it is.
The moon's been thrown out of the gravitational well of Earth and is ranging.
Yeah.
No, but to Bill's point, you're familiar with the books, the Guinness Books of World Records?
Sure.
Okay, so there was a book from the.
What the hell kind of question is that?
So from the 80s, you remember you get they were small books.
Are you
right?
familiar with the country of England?
So there was a very similar style book from the 80s called the Book of Lists.
Yes.
Okay. The authors of the Book of Lists did a book in the mid-early 70s, and it was called the Book of Predictions. And they went to experts across hundreds of different subjects and fields and said, you are an expert in your field. I think the book came out in 1974. You are an expert in your field. Tell us where you see your field and the world of your field in 30 years. And I found this book at like a flea market a number of years ago for $2. It might be the best $2 I've ever spent. Because the sheer scale of error in these predictions is magnificent. People have they are predicting the crop scientist is the crop scientist is either predicting the human population of Earth will be somewhere below 10,000 because everyone's starved. Or that they're the completely the opposite. Like it is we are living in a bounty and everything is free, and I mean it's
to that point. Familiar with Soylent Green?
Yes.
Yeah, which is slightly less well known.
It's people.
So that and so in this article that I've been writing, that was one of the 100 greatest lines all time. Like Soylent Green is people, and I was
people.
So I
people.
Put that into the article, and one of the editors, who was a little bit younger, Brian, or as he was known at the time, Bruce Richards. So I've never heard of this, and he was like a film studies major or something.
Was he?
I don't know. I'm making facts up all left and right here.
I
thought Hansen was the film studies guy, but he was a playwright or something.
Yeah, he was anyway. Soylent Green is people. What year do you think that was supposed to happen?
It came out. When did it come
Late
out?
60s.
74.
And now the total spoiler alert. By the way, rewind. Forget everything we've said if you're going to watch Soylent Green.
I don't know when does it come out?
2022. So that's coming up.
Right.
That's pretty.
I feel
scary.
that could still happen.
That we could be eating people in 3 years. I mean, so anyway, that's a 73 film. But again, that's your 40, 50 year horizon, a little bit longer, almost 50 year horizon.
Yeah, those early
70s,
those early 70s sci-fi movies are really depressing. Like Silent Running, same deal.
And Planet of the Apes. I don't remember what year the astronauts were supposed to have left, in that year. But there were a lot of
Tim Burton
dystopian.
Version?
No. So Soylent Green, also famous in this office.
Yes, it was the kitchen in the space
original Motley Fool asset management space. We named all of our conference rooms after fictional businesses from movies. And there was
Hudsucker Industries.
Of course.
There was Dunder Mifflin was
like the
office
office supplies closet, and the pharmaceutical company. from
Devlin McGregor.
Devlin McGregor was the main office, and the kitchen was Soylent Green.
We're going to have to vacate the studio in 11 minutes.
People are breathing a sigh of relief.
Yeah, exactly. Christmas plans? What are your Christmas plans? Any? Travel? What is? Does Guelph become a magical Christmas wonderland? Or maybe not Guelph because it's a large city with 120,000 people.
That's not that large.
You want to go out for a Christmas meal with the family. You get the snowmobile going, and
I was just thinking like Guelph Center. Like there's
there's the usual displays in various places. At my house, it'll be fairly muted, except my significant other is very into Christmas.
You say that with chagrin.
Well, it sounds
because
like
I'm not very into Christmas.
Sounds like a little bit of tension. It'll be muted, and yet somebody is very into Christmas.
We have
where do we go with that?
In your basement you have like the storage room, and it's usually the furnace room.
Yeah.
So we have an extra storage room that's just for Christmas decorations.
Okay.
And
that sounds. Hey,
and there will be about 4 or 5 Christmas trees in the house because
the rest of the crowd's here pretty Christmassy. You're like,
I'm Scrooge. I know.
More of a Thanksgiving guy. If you had to rank holidays, Thanksgiving, it makes number one for you and your family.
Number one day, like just like ranking the days of the year. Yeah, Thanksgiving's number one. I'd probably put Christmas, number 2.
I mean, if you had
for seasons, Christmas.
Yeah, no, our house gets very decked up.
But
I'll do Christmas dinner, and my parents will come over.
Okay.
My partner, her best friend and family will come over.
I'm just going to say that this has happened a few times in my life where
you are welcome, by the way. If you're in the neighborhood, feel free to drop by.
Thank you. There have been a few times in my life where I've had a friend, and then I meet the friend's significant other, and then I just think, oh, thank God that so one of them was my freshman year college roommate, and years ago he was in D.C. He was with this woman he had just started dating at the time, and so I met them for a drink before they were heading off to the wedding, and then she excused herself to go to the ladies' room, and as soon as she was out of earshot, he turned back to me. He said, "So what do you think?" And I said, "I think you should marry her as soon as possible. Like, she's great. For whatever reason, she thinks you're great, and I think you should marry her."
Lock that down before she figures it out.
And he did. And,
did you pull it off?
They're married, and they have a wonderful family. And so, having met your significant other,
I think I know
I'm
where this is going.
100% on her side.
You should be.
And
are you pushing marriage?
No, I'm just saying, especially considering.
Sounds like that's your way to solve problems.
No,
just go and marry that person.
No, I'm saying considering how you left the house, how all of that went down when you left the house, then you should just.
If you're allowed back in at all, you should be proposing. You should be buying like a bunch of engagement rings while you're out of the house.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that if you're let back in the house, you should just say, "Hey, when it's time to decorate the house for Christmas, can I be helpful and move some of the boxes out of the storage room?"
My role is curmudgeon.
Walk back in and beg for forgiveness.
Basically, here's the true story. She can do whatever she wants because I'm quite happy with whatever she usually does because she's smart, funny, and she's a lot of fun.
And thinks you're pretty good.
And I've managed to put it over on her for a number of years now. So
As my father used to say, it's a sorry man that doesn't marry up.
That's where we should end.